Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's wonderful to be back here on the CNBC-TV18 Budget Verdict platform. And many thanks to the Commerce Secretary, Mr. Rajesh Agrawal, for a very fitting start to Budget Verdict 2026. Sir, if I can start by asking you, the context that the Finance Minister laid out the budget, she did highlight the fact that India is faced with a very difficult geopolitical climate. We're also faced with geo-economic confrontation, geo-economic fragmentation, which makes the mix even more complex. And within that context, the government has decided to focus on enhancing competitiveness and thereby enhancing India's export competitiveness specifically. I want to understand from you the groundwork that the budget has laid out for 2026 and beyond. What now is the immediate export aspiration that can be achievable?
Thank you, Shereen. I hope I am audible clearly.
Loud and clear, sir.
Very well, sir.
To President Trump as well.
Yeah, thank you. So, Shereen, you see, for trade, I know it is this is a year of global turmoil, 2025. But still, if you see India has been one economy which has withstood and showed resilience. Our economic growth has been in the vicinity of 7%, and the projections are also that will be around 7% or so. Our exports have held good. Our exports have rather grown in this financial year for the first 9 months, and we are hopeful that we'll grow in the last quarter also and keep the trajectory northwards. And as Department of Commerce, as government, we have been creating a much wider ground, a much more fertile ground to see that we can take our export trajectory more northwards, can make a sustained growth in our exports as years come by. And in that quest, if you look at in last 1 year, we have concluded 4 free trade agreements with 30 countries, which might together, earlier we had 14 trade agreements with 26 countries. Now we have 4 trade agreements with 30 countries. And once these are operationalized, we are talking of 56 economies with which we'll have preferential market access, which constitutes around 55 to 60% of the global trade. So that's the kind of canvas we are opening for our industry to actually take advantage of and grow our export market and see that our exports are diversified and they can keep on growing. The budget completely goes on to provide the right structural and the systemic stability to it. If you look at budget, touches the right areas which can actually drive exports in the long run. It touches on manufacturing.
Yeah.
A good competitive manufacturing is a sine qua non for growing exports. It touches services in a big way. India is a services giant, and it keeps a target of 10% services by 2047. So if that is where we are going to move on, and India has been driving, we are 4.4% of the services export globally, that will keep on growing further. So that also will add to, and all these 56 countries that I talked to you about, they constitute 5 trillion of services market out of the total global basket of 8 trillion. So we are 60% of the globe we are covering, where there is more policy predictability, more clarity, so that our services can grow much faster. If you look at all the custom thing also, if you look at trust-based framework that it has been talked of, all the EODB that has been talked of, it will go on to make our products more competitive. And if our products become more competitive, I think it's much better for our exporters, and it's much easier with these FTAs and market opening up. I think our exports are well poised to grow. This year we are looking as to cross $850 billion, but going forward, once these FTAs are operationalized, I hope we'll catch on faster.
What is that number that you're working with? As soon as these FTAs are operationalized, UK hopefully will be done within this calendar year, and the EU mega trade deal should be operationalized in early 27 is what we're given to understand. If both these go through, I'm not even coming to the US yet, if both these go through, what could that export number look like, for instance, in FY27, FY28?
See, putting a definite number is a very difficult task, but I can tell you at the rate at which we will be growing, definitely there will be much sharper and much increase in the growth rate that you will see once these FTAs are operationalized, because we are talking for much bigger market. EU itself is a 10 trillion market, goods and services combined, and if that opens up, this is around 30% of the global trade. I think it can actually grow much faster.
Right.
So numbers I'll not guess, hazard a guess and keep on giving fodder to the media on that, but I feel it will grow very well.
Mr. Agrawal, when it comes to labor-intensive exports, we've been seeing in the April to November period exports of shrimp, fisheries, leather, footwear, textile, apparel coming under some amount of strain. And you've tried to help these sectors by reducing costs of raw materials that are being imported. Would you be able to quantify for us the kind of drop in exports for these sectors that may be on the anvil, and how you've tried to protect these sectors from the losses that they're incurring?
Thank you, Parikshit. I think labor-intensive sectors have been under challenge because of the global turmoil and the high tariffs that we face in one of our biggest market. But what I can tell you, in spite of that, I think the industry has shown enough resilience. The textile exports till December, overall at a global level, I think it has only grown, it has not gone down. Marine, we are growing in double digits in spite of these challenges because we are diversifying. We are growing in Europe, we are growing in Vietnam. On leather also, we are holding good as of now. So in sum total, in spite of this, all the challenges that we face, I think Indian industry, because of its own resilience, because of its adaptability, they have been able to hold good. And with these now new FTAs coming into being, as Shereen pointed out, if UK gets operationalized early, I think this will open up new windows where they can diversify more, deepen their exports in those markets, and maybe make good their losses that they are facing in other geographies.
Right. Just to also ask you about the theme of resilience. You've tried to bring in a lot of resilience with the budget, making sure that there is ease of doing business as well. When it comes to the trade deal with European Union, for that matter, how do you think this deal, along with EFTA, along with UK, is going to open up opportunities for services exports? Yesterday's budget was a lot about services. And how do you think the budget push, along with the FTA push, will help the services sector?
First thing, if you look at the EU, 27 economies, UK, and the 4 economies of EFTA, all these 32 economies are a service-driven economy. UK has 70% of the GDP of UK come from services. So they're all services-driven economy. If you look at all these 3 free trade agreements, you will see the policy commitments under services in all these three agreements are very high. In EU, we get one of the best ever commitments in 144 subsectors, which means a long-term policy predictability for all our service exporter in 144 sectors. In UK also we get something around that. In EFTA also we have got one of their best offers. So what we see in all these economies which are large service consumers, we are seeing a long-term policy predictability. We have got commitments around mobility also in all these agreements that will also help our service providers to move in the right direction. And now with the impetus that we get in the budget, like the impetus for the GCC, the safe harbor rates, thresholds going up, aligning it with the best practices across the world. What will happen, the GCC ecosystem, which was as it is growing very fast in India, now a lot of GCCs from even European and these companies from this region will also find it easier to open GCCs in India because they have got more policy predictability in India, and we have got mode 1 commitments in all these agreements. So they can sit here and export services there. So the FTA actually aligned with the policy shift or the support that we are getting under the budget.
You know, your predecessor, BVR Subramaniam, called it the services budget here on CNBC-TV18, Mr. Agrawal. I know there's many people, including Mr. Kanabar, waiting to ask you a question, but let me ask you, sir, you laid out for us what's the latest as far as the UK FTA is concerned, the EU FTA is concerned. Let me ask you the big question that everybody in this room and in the country wants to know. What is the latest on the US trade deals? The last conversation that you and I had, you said that there were 2 frameworks that were being looked at. One was the trade deal in itself, and the other was a framework to address the reciprocal tariffs. India's been hit with 50% tariffs. The other framework, in your words, was to deal with the reciprocal tariffs. What's the progress on both those 2 frameworks?
As I told you last time, Shereen, I think we remain engaged, very positively engaged, and it's progressing very well. The 2 frameworks are still in place. The larger framework is going to take time because US is a big economy and a larger, deep, wider FTA will always going to take time. But the one which can be done in the short run is the one which is an early harvest, can address the reciprocal tariff bit, is also getting shape. When it will happen, how fast it will happen, these are the questions. I think I'll not put a date to it, but we are hopeful that we should get it sooner than later. Let's see what happens next.
Sir, I'm just going to push you a little bit on this. When you say we're waiting for it to take shape, or it is shape in progress and work in progress, can you explain to us what are the cornerstones, what are the pillars that both sides are working on, at least as far as this reciprocal tariff framework is concerned?
Largely, see, reciprocal tariffs are in the good space. If you look at these tariffs are in the good space. So one of the key discussions in this is how we are able to align our tariffs on both sides to see that we work towards a more balanced trade between the two nations. So that is going to be the core of whatever we achieve in the first. Aligned with that, when you, as you mentioned, tariff itself is not the driver of trade. The entire ecosystem, the policy certainty or the non-tariff issues also needs to be addressed. I think we are trying to discuss on both sides to see that when the deal gets finalized, both sides are better off than where they are standing
How much
today.
convergence is there today, Mr. Agrawal, on the framework to deal with the reciprocal tariffs? Would you say we're 90% done, we're 80% done, we're 50% done? How much convergence is there on both sides?
I think you heard my minister a few days back where he said most of the sticky issues are now out of the... So that's where I will leave it, that most of the sticky issues are more or less resolved. So we are progressing fast. Let's see what happens next.
One quick question before I hand it back to Parikshit, and then I'll get the audience to come in as well, is a comment that's come in from President Trump. On board Air Force One, President Trump said that a concept of a deal has been arrived at with India to buy Venezuelan crude. Now, for context and for the benefit of our viewers, India was a buyer of Venezuelan crude till the US actually sanctioned Venezuelan crude. So I want to understand from you, sir, what is the concept of a deal that President Trump claims that we have arrived at on Venezuelan crude?
See, one, I'll not like to comment on Honorable President Trump's comments because that will not be fair on my part. Two, from India's perspective, we are an energy importer. We import a lot of energy, and our position always have been that we want to have a very resilient, diversified supply chain for energy products. So we'll always want to diversify, we look for more opportunities, and in that quest, what happens is something for the energy department to decide.
Okay. You know, Mr. Agrawal, the other question I think a lot of exporters would want to know, you've sealed a number of FTAs. Some of them will take effect this year, will be ratified this year. How many more deals is the government of India likely to seal or sign this year? You're in negotiations with Israel, with Canada, with Mercosur. What's the status?
Yeah, we are in midst of multiple other negotiations also, but with EU closed, and I think one of the major part of the globe, 27 economies gets closed. So we are now 56 countries which will be having preferential market access. In addition, we are looking at markets we provide which are complementary in nature, like Israel, where goods and services basket is more complementary in nature. We are also looking at GCC. We are also looking at Chile. We are also trying to look at EAU also. There's also a negotiations going in progress with them. So we are hopeful some of these deals will definitely find finalization this year. We are also looking at, now you have heard something that the Canada also wants to have resume the negotiations and restart negotiations in that direction. We are considering that also, or are engaged with our counterparts on the other side. So we hope with this 6-7 new negotiations going on, some of them will cross the finish line this year. I'll not again put a number of which one, because I'll not put one against another, but we are positively engaged on all these negotiations, and wherever we can find fast convergence, a win-win solutions and a mutually beneficial deal coming into shape, we'll try to finalize it and move ahead.
You know, one question that I'd like to ask you is about the sentiment. We'll not go into the nitty-gritties of the trade deal with the US again, sir, but what is the impact that it has had on market sentiment? We've seen net FDI coming down, slowing down. There has been a flight of FIIs as well. What can be done and what would be your priority in terms of having a durable, sustained pipeline of FDI in the country? Would there be certain priority areas which you would be looking to liberalize this year or maybe push harder?
One, I think on FDI, if you look at in multiple other sectors, we have liberalized FDI. Insurance also, it has gone up to 100%. Secondly, in our FTAs also that we are signing, like the one we are finalized with EU also, if you look at, there are multiple services sector where we have taken investment commitments, we have given policy certainty on investments so that they can come and invest in mode 3.
Yeah.
And that's how the GCCs will shape up.
Right.
So I think we are doing a bit as part of FTA also, wherever we can take commitments to give a policy certainty. On a MFN basis also, India, I think majority of sectors on automatic rate today, and it's a very consistent policy that we are seeing over years. There hardly been any backtracking of limits that we have seen in India. So I think there is a signaling to the world that India is providing a policy certainty in the long run. So there is already a signal open. Many of these things globally are happening at the same point in time. I will not like to make one as the causative factors for the other. They might be all happening in the same time zone or time arena, but they may not be connected also at point in time. Without getting into those details, I will not like to comment and get into, because I don't know where actually one is affecting the other.
Fair point. Dinesh Kanabar, sir, go ahead with your question.
First of all, sir, compliments on the FTA, and of course we are waiting for the elephant in the room to sort of be addressed. I think a couple of very important things which I saw in the budget which are very, very positive. One is the tax holiday on data center, and the reason I mention this is that over the last few years, the government has walked away from tax holidays. And I think it's important for the government to realize that the sectors where we see a lot of investment coming in, we need to promote and give holidays. So the tax holiday on data center does give a degree of certainty, which is very welcome. I think the even more welcome thing, which I don't think has been spoken about a lot, is the safe harbor on services, which will promote a huge amount of global capability centers coming to India. One suggestion there is that there has been an overall cap on who can avail, so your turnover needs to be less than 2,000 crores. I don't think that is necessary really. Just opening that up will be very, very positive. You mentioned that we are looking at manufacture in India, we're looking at that creating a base for export. And I was a little bit disappointed, if I may say so, that there was nothing much for R&D and manufacture in India. I think those are the two areas which we need to look at, because we are looking at H-1B visas, whatever is happening out there, probably an inward flight of the talent coming to India. If you are able to provide that platform for R&D, promote semiconductor, etc., that's one thing. And the last comment, Parikshit asked you about a question on FTA. Where are we on press note 3 and how do we address that? Thank you.
Mr. Kanabar, you've taken all my questions. Go ahead, Mr. Agrawal, you can start by answering.
Thank you. One on the GCCs and the safe harbor rate, I think it's a very strong forward movement from 300 crores to 2,000 crores, and the safe harbor rate which are more aligned to international norms. And if you look at the fine print, I think the budget also provides us for a fast tracking mechanism beyond 2,000 crores. So there is a provision wherein there will be a fast track mechanism where the tax authorities and the GCC can finalize. So I think that will provide a lot of comfort to the GCCs to grow. Data centers, as you rightly said, I think it's a very forward-looking policy. The tax certainty bit will enable a complete data center ecosystem in this India to get fast track, and a lot of exports through that data services will also take place from India, adding to my export kitty. So that is also a plus from our perspective in a big way. The third question, the third aspect that you talked about, R&D, I think some of these new agreements that we are doing, there's an technology and R&D collaboration also we are talking of. R&D is something that you can't have any binding commitments from the country, but this is somewhere we are talking of tech cooperation, R&D cooperation with the country. We talked of agri-tech cooperation when we did New Zealand. We talk of technological and high-tech cooperation when we did EU. So we are looking at the right synergies and trying to bring that in forward also. In budget also, I think when we talk of university campuses which can provide education services, I think R&D gets built into it. When we talk of GCCs, GCCs are also now providing R&D services online. So I think there is a lot of R&D which is coming horizontally in many of these things that we are doing, and it will definitely add to the press note 3. I think it is handled by my colleague. It is something which has been discussion in media a lot. As like you, I have also been reading in media a lot. So I hope, let's see what is the decision.
But Mr. Agrawal, what should we realistically now expect in terms of re-engagement with China? Many steps have already been taken, a resumption of visas, travel and so on and so forth. In terms of trade, in terms of economic re-engagement with China, what should we now realistically expect? Chinese companies being allowed back into tendering processes and so on and so forth. Again, a lot of speculation around that. What is the government's thinking? Whether or not a decision has been taken is a separate matter. What's the government's thinking?
I think it's Chinese company, as it is with PN3 also, they don't come under automatic route, but through a screening committee they can come, the investments can come, and that must have been happening in some cases and there. I think with these positive movements in the bilateral relations, some of these issues are being discussed in media. I'm sure in the government also deep consultations are going on. If the movements, because these positive movements with our neighbor, once these are getting, they have to be quid pro quo, it has to be from both sides. Right. I think our people in MEA and DPIIT must be collaborating to see what are the next steps that we can do on PN3 also. So let's wait for any final decision, final call by the government.
Fair enough.
Till then I think we can all keep discussing and keep on building the right pressure or expectation in the ecosystem. Thank you.
When it comes to reducing dependencies, and that's connected with the China question, the budget went a long way in terms of reducing our dependencies on rare earth, on critical capital goods, critical components as well, and their raw materials. Would you say that this is a theme that India is going to double down on, focus on more aggressively, map out our dependencies, look at areas where we're dependent on China or other nations for that matter, and invest more in localization?
I think,
and could you list out 4 top priority sectors for us?
I think COVID itself, when we had COVID across, I think COVID has brought in this new debate of resilient supply chains, plugging the vulnerabilities and trying to see that our sourcings are more diversified. All countries across the world are now talking about it, and they are trying to do their bit to do it. But this is something which is easier said than done. It takes time. I think in India, we have come up with very concrete steps. The budget provides for concrete steps while talking of critical minerals corridors and things like that, to see that we are able, because critical minerals are an important element in our decarbonization effort also. So if you want to move on a trajectory of decarbonization, we need to work on it. So I think the budget touches the right pain points to see that we are able to work in that direction. And this is something I think each country is trying to do. When US does the mineral partnership or Pax Silica, I think this is also moving in the direction trying to see that how we can reduce vulnerability in the critical mineral supply chain.
Right.
So that I think has been the theme around the globe. Everybody is talking about it. And for India, which has got 1.4 billion population, one of the fastest growing major economy with a very clear aspiration to go to Viksit Bharat 2047, it becomes more so important that we are able to plug our vulnerability sooner than later.
We've got a lot of questions, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, the government has done a very good job on FDI, not just now, but over the years, this government. And that gives me the encouragement to ask you a slightly provocative question. What in your view are the red lines for this government in terms of opening up FDI? What sectors fall within those red lines? And do you think India has evolved enough that we look at some sort of relaxation on foreign direct investment in multi-brand retail? In some formats perhaps, do you think we as a society and as an economy now have the resilience to be able to absorb this? You've opened up insurance, you've opened up virtually every sector in the economy. But modern retail, multi-brand retail still remains close to foreign investment for the most part. How do you look at that?
I can tell you, Mr. Agrawal, that he and I have had this conversation and this debate for a large part of the last 15 years. So multi-brand retail, we've opened up defense, insurance, pretty much everything. Is that still off the cards?
See, I am not a subject owner on this, so I'll not be able to give a clear government perspective on this because I am not handling that subject, so I'll not be able to say so. But my sense is, as an economy, we are maturing fast, and if you look at multiple sectors that we are deepening our FDI limits and opening up, that goes on to say that story. Multi-brand retail, the sensitivity is not on the multi-brand retail per se, because it is because our economy is poised and is structured in a particular way. The structure of our economy is quite different than the structure of many other economies.
Yeah.
So we have to look at, it's not only about the economic growth, because many countries at the same economic growth level can have a different prescriptions or different, because of the structure of our economy. And we are a very huge economy, huge population, and huge amount of population dependent on different kind of vocations and different kind of.
Yeah.
So we need to look at, if we take these decisions, what is the different pathway in which our economies will grow. And that's why I think this is best, the subject owner will go, but these decisions are something where they think when government feels this is matured enough, it will be taken.
Okay, it will be taken. We've got the budget architects walking into the budget verdict. The DPAM Secretary Arunesh Chawla, welcome sir. Thanks very much for joining us. We will come to you in just a second. But let me also bring in Ajay Roti and Anita Rastogi of PwC. Can you raise your hand so that I can come across to you? There you go, Anita. I can see you there. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So, sir, I think this budget has been really good as far as the requirement of the current need of the country is concerned. But regarding cross-border transactions, we just wanted some more, in-depth analysis by the government to ensure that the businesses don't really get into small little litigations, considering the transfer pricing and customs are two very different areas and they have two different objectives. So is there, and also the economic survey has recommended that, there should be a convergence over there and there should be coordination. So is there any thought in the mind of the government in this area as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
I think we have been moving positively in that direction, and even the GCC thing that we are talking of again is trying to address that issue precisely. So it is being moved in that direction slowly, but these things take time. It doesn't happen, these reforms don't happen in a day.
Okay, we have questions here. Go ahead,
sir. Good evening, this is Ajay Roti. Again, this is linked to the, what Mr. Kanabar called as the elephant in the room, and where Shereen pushed you on the dates for US trade deal. Given how it's been going with other countries, sir, will we be actually seeing a full-fledged FTA equivalent, or is it a framework? Will we actually have a deal, or is it more of, because even what we've seen is that the so-called deals are also don't last too long. So what is it that we can expect in the short term? Is there an overall agreement on, like you mentioned, only reversal of the reciprocal tariff and thereafter working towards a longer deal? Will we have a full-fledged FTA like the EU, UK, etc., or are we looking at just an agreement in principle on certain things in the immediate future?
As I told earlier also, there are two parts of the deal that we are looking at. One is the larger part, but this will depend on the appetite on the both sides, because it takes two to tango. The appetite has to be on both sides. So then only it will happen, because in any deal the commitments are going to be from the both the side, both the partner countries. As far as the reciprocal tariff bit is concerned, if you have looked at the number of deals that has been announced, I think only one or two deals, the details and the deal has been finalized per se. Majority of deals have been announced, but they have not been completely rolled out yet. So we don't know what is the legal framework in which each one of these deals will be falling. So for us also, that is one of the points that we are trying to figure out when we are doing that. Because there is a wide array of choices that both partners have while fixing the interim deal, while it will address reciprocal tariffs and tariffs on both sides, but the legal frameworks can vary depending on what kind of commitments and how both sides want to give to each other.
Mr. Agrawal, you said it takes two to tango, sir. So are we on the same dance floor even, or we're not even on the same dance floor today, sir?
Therein I'll only say you have been hearing Honorable President Trump. He says that we are very near and is going to do one.
We are very near and we're going to do this. Sandeep Jhunjhunwala of Nangya Global, if we could stand up so that I can see where you are and get a microphone across to you. Go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good evening. Regarding the FTA, while we know that the US is in the pipeline and EU is something which is already sealed, And you spoke about some of the other larger FTAs being in the pipeline. Just wanted to understand if you could give us a little more visibility on what are those other significant ones, and what does the Indian economy and the Indian consumers stand to gain on account of those FTAs as and when they come.
I think he answered that already. Parikshit, over to you.
Yeah. So, Shereen, I had a question for Mr. Agrawal, and this is based on the budget, sir. And this is an item that you had been working on how to make it easier for manufacturers within special economic zones to sell within the domestic tariff area. And the budget has announced that they will be given concessional duties. Could you give us a sense on when this scheme will be implemented? What will be the concessional duty that will be offered? What are the sectors that are likely to benefit?
I'll touch on two aspects. One, why. SEZs is an old scheme that has been going on, but what has happened over the years, the landscape of trade has changed. Over the last 15-20 years, we have done multiple FTAs. So many other countries and many other SEZs across the world now have duty-free access to our market in many other sectors. So SEZ may be functioning in Vietnam, may have a duty-free access in some sectors in India. Our SEZs don't have that. So we are trying to look at how we are able to provide that access to them also. But at the same time, we need to see that the interest of the domestic industry also doesn't. So we are trying to find a fine balance between protecting the interest of domestic industry, but at the same time trying to give them a pathway. And that's why this announcement. Two, now that this announcement will definitely spur a lot of confidence in our SEZ units, because the ideal capacity that has been lying there can be used very well to substitute some of our import supply chains in the domestic market. Two, when they get scale, they become more competitive. The production becomes more competitive, and competitive production means more exports. So I think it will also enable our more exports also, more value add in the SEZs, and also lead it here. Three, when do we do it? I think it has been announced in the budget. We will try to do as fast as possible, because both commerce and revenue will need to sit together and try to figure out what are going to be the duty rates and how we are able to roll it out. I think it shouldn't take much time, but I think as early as possible in the next financial year, we should roll it out.
Right.
In the next financial year, sorry Parikshit, just one quick clarification there, sir, because the finance minister said that this is going to be a one-time window. So how long for which this period of relief is going to be provided for? This window is going to be open for how long, sir?
I think my sense is that window, because I think this is something we are looking at for the existing units in the SEZ, and that's why probably it's a one-time measure that has been announced, because the current units which are there are facing this challenge. They have ideal capacity, and this is not being leveraged to substitute the imported supply chains in the domestic market. So we are trying to provide that facility to them. The details around this scheme, I think both ministries will sit together and finalize, and that's why the broad intent of the government has been conveyed as a part of the budget statement, but details will be worked out between the two ministries, and we'll roll it out to the satisfaction of our SEZs. Thank you.
So a lot of exporters have been coming to you with pain points over the last few months. Are there more targeted schemes for certain sectors, maybe like the leather sector, which are on the anvil, which you're thinking of in order to support the labor-intensive exports? And also on the timeline for implementation of the export promotion mission, if you can give us a sense.
One, I think on the schemes for sectors, I think largely these are the different stakeholder ministries which come up with various supporting scheme for the sector. Like for textile, a lot of Samath 2.0 has been announced, other initiatives have been announced for textile in the budget itself. So they will all be rolled out by the administrative ministry, and this is agnostic to export or domestic market. It is for growing that sector in the economy. It will definitely have a positive for the exports also. We normally don't do sector-specific schemes or incentives for exports per se. So that is something not been our practice in the UOC. Under the export promotion mission, we have already rolled it out. We have around 11 components that we have planned as a part of the export promotion mission. 3 of those guidelines are in public domain and on which actual work has started, and industry is actually going to take benefit of them in these 2 months. Already some of them, sanction orders and all, are being issued. 6 more guidelines are going to be announced in next 10 days. So 3 plus 6, we'll have 9 guidelines which will be completed, announced for industry to actually take benefit of it. There are 2 more guidelines which will be left, and we'll try to finish them off also in the month of February. There's a complete framework under the export promotion mission which is available to the exporters, and they can try to take their due benefit. Largely, if you look at, this is more attuned to MSMEs,
Yeah.
and if they are able to take benefit under this, I think many of their pain points will remain addressed, and they will be able to plug into export supply chain in a much bigger way.
Let me ask you a question as far as the macros are concerned, Mr. Agrawal. The current account deficit at this point in time, the government has said that you're comfortable with the situation, even though we have seen a significant decline and a depreciation in the rupee. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, the currency depreciation as well as the macros, how you're looking at that. And there was a lot of chatter around the fact that the government may try and put in a duty to curb the import of gold and silver. We didn't see any duty imposition, but does the import bill on account of gold and silver concern you?
Definitely, I think 2 of the biggest elephant in the import bill are energy and gold and silver. But however, this year I think we are doing good on our import front also. The import growth this year as compared to last financial year has been slightly subdued, not very subdued, but slightly subdued. Our trade deficit still will go up a bit, but it will not go up substantially. My sense is overall trade deficit will go up by $15 to $20 billion by the end of the year. But that, I think, with the overall trade growing on both sides, import and exports total growing by $80 billion this year as compared to FY26. I think this is FY25. I think this is something that we can live with.
And the rupee, sir, that's helping exporters for sure at this point in time. Does it? How much of the tariff hit is it helping provide a buffer for?
I think the rupee depreciation does help exports, but then you also need to remember, I need to export more to get you the same dollar numbers.
Yes.
So every time when I say that we are doing better in exports, this is in dollar terms.
Yeah.
And if I am doing 2% there, then I am actually doing 7-8% to do that. So that is also to our strength of our industry, who has been able to take advantage of this and actually ramp up the exports.
Right. Gokul?
Congratulations, sir, on the EU FTA. It is a landmark deal. One of the things that it will be good to hear is this controversy around CBAM continuing to apply to the Indian exports. And secondly, in the budget, there's a provision for 20,000 crore spent on some form around carbon capture. Is that connected to enabling the export from some of the sectors which are impacted by CBAM?
Thanks. I think on CBAM there has been a lot of discussion with the EU also. We need to understand CBAM is a horizontal regulation. This is a regulation which they have brought in, which is equally applicable to the domestic industry also in the EU and also for the imports. This is one regulation on which there is no derogation that they have been able to give to any country thus far. But what we have been able to secure as part of FTA is 2 kinds of commitment. One, in case there is any flexibility that they are able to extend to anybody in the world under CBAM, India gets it automatically. So we will never be worse off than anybody else as far as the CBAM regulation is concerned. 2, we have also been able to get a technical dialogue set up as part of FTA, wherein we'll get clear insight into how the CBAM is calculated, how the CBAM levy is being worked out, so that our industry is able to understand it clearly and align its supply chains accordingly. 2, we have been able to push them to see that the local verifiers in India are also accredited, so that our industry is able to verify that. 3, we have also ensured that in case tomorrow we come up with a carbon trading mechanism in India, the impact of the same is also linked to CBAM, so that there is no double payment of levy by the Indian industry in the supply chains going to Europe. So I think this will help us to deal with this better, and that in that perspective we have done this. And 3, I think decarbonization is a common endeavor of EU and India. And in that quest, we have also tried to work, we are working on a common pool of funds wherein EU can bring in money to help us decarbonize in India, especially in the hard-to-abate sectors. So that is also where they can bring in both technology and finance, technical assistance to support us. That is part of their joint statement also.
Yeah.
And once you get the fine print of FTA, you'll find a mention of that also in the FTA.
We've also got Christian Arora from Grant Thornton. He's got a question for you, Mr. Agrawal. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. I just wanted to, get your thoughts on the speculation which was around announcements or revival of PLIs, and we, in the economic survey also it was mentioned about, the success of PLI, but also looking at reviving them in some form or the other. But there were some announcements specifically for certain sectors, but beyond that, the thrust sectors and the strategic sectors, is there any thought that PLI schemes would also be part of some of the thought process which will come in, as we can see?
See, I look at PLI or any other such scheme in a very broader perspective. If you look at historically also, governments have been supporting, giving sectoral support for domestic industry to grow and get to some size. So production linked incentive is the incentive when the incentives are linked to production. Similarly, their incentives can be linked to employment. You have got employment linked incentive. You can have incentives linked to some other outcomes also. The idea is, can we cover up for the handicap that our industry faces vis-a-vis its global peers, so that it can do that initial journey with the support of the government, and once it is matured enough, it can then run on its own. So that is something which every government does, and the government needs to do it, and this is something which will happen in India also in some form or other.
Well, we've also got the Expenditure Secretary joining us. Sir, many thanks for joining us here. But Mr. Agrawal, before we close with you, sir, manufacturing, as you pointed out, a lot for services in the budget. But on manufacturing, sir, we are still at that 17% share of GDP, sir, despite the many measures that the government has put in place. Do you now feel confident that on the back of the additional steps taken, that we will finally get anywhere closer to that 20%? The aspirational number has been 25% for very, very long, but moving beyond this 15, 17% to even 20%, sir, by when?
I think the budget provides a right boost to the manufacturing sector. If you look at, they have been talking of 200 legacy industrial clusters which will be rejuvenated. That will provide a boost to manufacturing. They have talked of support to 7 key sectors like electronics, semiconductors, marine, textiles and others. That will also lead to larger manufacturing in this. So there is a trajectory which is looking northwards. This budget, the focus on some of these sectors and reviving those industrial cluster will only add to it. So definitely I think we are moving northwards as far as the manufacturing also concerned, but our GDP is also moving northward. So I think there is some catching up that needs to be done. But till we are both moving northwards, I don't think there is a cause of worry.
Are you being able to catch up with any sleep, considering the fact that you're probably on the phone or on Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams meetings with the US, sir?
It happens the job in the Commerce Ministry is to deal with entire globe at multiple points in time, and that's why we have got a strong team which looks into various aspects and various time zones to deal with them. Our working hours are a bit different, but at the same time I think they are more satisfying with these FTAs coming to fore. I think any kind of work is satisfying and is good to look up to now.
So how many all-nighters did you pull in the last lap leading up to the EU FTA?
I think EU FTA last 3 weeks were tough because both sides had a deadline to meet and there were things we needed to close. So there was hard work and teams needed to work. But because we are only 4 hours apart, I think we could manage it much better.
Well, Mr. Agrawal, we hope that, as you said, it takes 2 to tango, that we actually see that tango result in something soon. But many thanks for joining us, answering so patiently the many questions that our participants here have put to you, and for explaining to us the thinking, the rationale and the priorities of the Ministry of Commerce. Many thanks indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the Commerce Secretary joining us
Thank
here
you so much,
on the CNBC-TV18 Budget Verdict. We will take a break.
Thank you.
The conversations continue. The newsmakers, the headliners will join us. We'll be joined by the DPAM Secretary and the Expenditure Secretary after this very short break. Stay tuned. You're with the Budget Verdict.
You've heard the